So my whole premise for Wired for Success is the connector between the personal, the professional, and the organizational. Let me show it to you. Let me share it with you now. You take a snapshot of these details if you like for future reference, particularly with Cindy there. Thank you. And now, here we are on Wired for Success. If you just follow my logic for one moment, the personal, the professional, the organizational, to my mind, are inextricably linked. Knowing me, understanding you. The higher self-knowledge I have, the greater the likelihood that I will bring understanding to everything I do, and especially to the workplace. Looking at the personal, the journey of self-discovery, then purpose, vision, mission, and values, the mindset, your adaptability, your change orientation. Hold that for one moment. Let's come to the professional. That whole thing of teamwork. Are you a team player? What sort of position do you take on a team? What's your level of engagement like? What's your motivation? Why are you doing what you're doing? What's your purpose? What drives you? And then, are you a leader? Are you a born leader? Are you an emergent leader? Are you happy to be a follower? And many people are. And they reckon that the real hallmark of a real professional leader is his or her ability to bring out the leader in everybody else, in what Mowbray calls the adaptive leadership style. And then come to the organization. So important to get the person-job fit right. If in the personnel selection and assessment a stage of taking somebody on, you get the wrong person in the lead role, the organization is in trouble. Look at the organization. Look at organizing within the organization, the structures, the frameworks, etc., that are put in place. The signature strength of any leader in an organization is if in his absence, that organization continues seamlessly in his absence or her absence. We've got a lot of buzzwords going around in the organizational world these days. DEI, diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion. And I ask, what of the illusion of inclusion? We've also got the ESG, got to do with the environmental and the global and all of the social. But really, how much lip service are we just paying to these buzzwords? Then finally, colliding with your own personal purpose and your sense of values and your mission and your vision, is that which you bring to the organization, the organization's purpose, vision, mission, and the culture that's built in an organization and that's cultivated and nurtured and that's passed on to newcomers into your organization. Now, look at the crossovers. In the personal, I believe the personal and professional are gelled together through emotional intelligence, and that downward journey right across the lifespan and the work span. Development of emotional intelligence. But as I found out in one study I did in Trinity College, you must be careful on how you use your emotional intelligence. You must use it wisely, and you must spread the leadership to others through delegation and appropriate delegation to your staff. Come on the link between the personal and the organizational. There's got to be agility and fluid movement between both. Now come to the bottom, organizational and the professional. The fit must be right. But what glues it all together? Trust. Without trust, we're going nowhere. Trust is the glue that holds that psychological contract together in the workplace and is the basis, the foundation on which all else thrives. I'm offering this as a full, whole blended course to organizations. I'm also offering it piecemeal. If it's, for instance, somebody comes to me and says, Teresa, I want to work in the personal, I'll offer the course on that. The professional, I'll offer that. If somebody wants me to go into an organization and work on the organizational with little pieces pulled from the others, I'll do that. At the moment, there's a book in the making and it will be out mid next year. The toolkit for organizations right across all sectors. Let's move on. So today's takeaways, you'll get the audio of today's webinar. You'll also get an audio of a voiceover of what Wired for Success it means. You get a booklet, the 10 techniques for dealing with self-limiting beliefs. And as Cindy has already alluded to, and we're great believers in the onward journey of learning. That's how we met. And that's how we will meet more people this year through the Inner MBA. So I will have some recommended reading for you. One phrase remains with me from my learning and my reading. Two things remain with the soul when we depart this life: the love we've shown our fellow man and the lessons learned, the learning we take with us. Okay, so today we look at mindset formation, mindset as a misnomer, how the brain works, the whole notion of neuroplasticity, introducing you to the undoing of the hardwiring, the disempowering of the saboteur, and the strengthening of the sage muscle in the brain. Then Cindy, I'll hand over to Cindy, and Cindy will do some breath work with you. And that will be for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we'll go back and have a look at change. And we'll introduce you to an avenue we've been brought down, the ITC mapping, immunity to change mapping. And it was through that work every Thursday morning from 8 to 9 that myself and Cindy became great friends. Session 2 on the 20th of October is going to be around road mapping the wellbeing journey, the 10-point action plan. Okay, so mindset matters. Johnson says great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance. And you know, anything good you ever achieved in life is achieved on diligence and perseverance. I'm a great believer in reframing. Life is all in the taking. Everything that happens in life, everything you go through in life is a matter of perspective. Everything that's put in front of you, stand back, give yourself time and say, reframe it. How else might I see these things? So the notion of individual difference, I think, is often lost on people, both in the workplace or even around your own kitchen table. The beauty and the richness of individual difference, and has been a topic under investigation and in the psychology world for a long, long time. So you ask, why do some people see things as success and others see them as failure? What happens that causes this? Is it nature and nurture, the psychology of the game? Is it physical? And if you trace that whole development down through the ages of psychology, phrenology and craniology, now they're down to the genes. Is it in the genes? Is it the environment, background experiences, training, approaches to learning, or is it a combination of all three? Now, Binet, the IQ guru, education and practice can cause fundamental changes in intelligence, he says. And a phrase from modern ideas about children. A few modern philosophers assert that an individual's intelligence is a fixed quantity that cannot be increased. We must protest and react against this brutal pessimism. With practice, training, and above all, methods, we manage to increase our attention, our memory, our judgment, and literally become more intelligent than we were before. That's something to take away with us. So the beauty of this is we're never stuck. We're not static. We are on the move, and we should be developing and moving fluidly across our lifespan, learning and developing. So the view you adopt for yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life, according to Carl Dweck, who wrote the wonderful book on mindset, which I have at the end here, a picture of it for you to remind you to maybe look it up and read it. What you believe is what you become. We've got all these phrases: what you eat is what you become. I believe what you believe is what you become. We feed our body for nourishment. We must also feed our brain. Look at the fixed mindset and the growth mindset for one moment. Where do you think you would place yourself? Do you avoid challenges? Do you shy away from things you don't know? Are you unable to handle criticism or feedback when you're brought in for that performance appraisal? Or do you thank the person who's given you the critique and take note of it and grow from it? Intelligence and talent is static. It doesn't develop post-birth. Surely that is not your thought. Do not carry out any actions without seeking approval. You're focused on proving yourself. You're threatened by others' success rather than using it as a model for your own future success. Effort is not regarded as fruitful. And understanding failure is, you see failure as the limit of your abilities and your possibilities moving forward. Do you give up easily? Come to the right, that colourful part. You view challenges as opportunities. You view failures as growth moments. You acknowledge and embrace your weaknesses. What is a weakness? A weakness is something identified that you work on and that you render a strength. Learn to give and receive a constructive criticism. And do you embed that in the culture of your workplace? Intelligence and talent is dynamic and ever improving. Prioritize learning over seeking approval. Focus on the process instead of the end result. Are you inspired by the success of others? Do you emulate what others are doing? Think of learning as a brain training, the brain gym. Understanding failure as an opportunity to grow. Do you persist in the face of setbacks? I.e., are you resilient? And resilience can be learned right across the lifespan. The fact that you may not have discovered it until recently doesn't mean that you cannot become totally resilient and totally aware of this onward journey. So the nature of mindsets, fixed growth, and what are the benefits? Mindsets have to do with the habits of mind. They're created by experiences, the good and the bad, and how you reframe what has happened to you and how you turn it on its head and go at it again from a different angle. Mindsets can create blind spots and occlude your vision towards greater possibilities. They are self-deceptive. They shape our lives, they shape our world, they shape our worldview and how we interpret what's happening in a world scale and in this globalized village that the world is becoming. It's very important to have an open mindset. Mindsets can be developed at any stage across the lifespan, and the negative, limited mindsets can be transcended. Hold that reframing in mind. Okay, so taking another look at it, let's look at it on a continuum across challenges, obstacles, effort, criticism, success of others. So your challenges, do you embrace them or do you avoid them? Do you actively avoid them because they're uncomfortable? Obstacles, do you persist in the face of obstacles or do you give up easily? Effort, do you view effort as the pathway to mastery? Practice makes perfect. Or do you think that's too much? It's fruitless. It's not worthwhile. Criticism, do you learn from it? Do you take umbrage? Are you personally hurt by criticism? Or do you choose to ignore it and say, that's just somebody off and around? Success of others. Do you see it as a source of learning and inspiration, or do you view it as a threat? Do you view other successful people around you as a threat to your possibilities? And do you shut down? The importance of growth mindsets really resurfaced in that time during COVID-19 and during lockdown and during that whole pivot to working from home, and now that straddling between the hybrid model or relocating back into the office. In actual fact, COVID-19 caused us to really question ourselves, question what we were doing, questioning the balance we had between the four pillars of our lives, our work life, our home life, our community and social involvement, and our me time. How many of us could say we had all four in proportion? I certainly didn't. Okay. So converting life setbacks into future successes, you may ask yourself, how did I ever come to that light bulb moment, that moment of success? Was it because of love of challenge? Was it my return to learning that was an awakening? Personally, looking back on my late teens into my 20s, I couldn't wait to get out of university. But when I returned to learning in Trinity College in my mid-40s, it seemed to be, at the buzz I got from it and the awakening and the opening up of a whole different world was just enormous. Was it due to belief in effort? Was it self-reliance, knowing that no matter what happens, I will survive? Was it the whole notion of resilience in the face of setback that actually got me to where I am? That notion, that desire for enhanced success, change of career, did that awaken me? And for me, a change of career after 30 years in leadership roles in education up to lecturing and a master's in management and leadership, that was an awakening for me. And that was a change, a reinvigoration. Was it the ripple effect of good for others you encounter? Was it increased empathy? That hinting there at the emotional intelligence. Goleman would say that the absence of self-awareness impedes the growth of all other areas of emotional intelligence. So we must be highly self-aware. We must work on our strengths, our weaknesses, recognize our weaknesses and work on them to render them strengths. We must be comfortable in our own skin and work on that self-confidence. So let's briefly look at the brain. I'm not going to get too technical or go down rabbit hole with this, but when we think positively, we feel good about situations, life, and about ourselves. This in turn allows our bodies to release hormones like dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. Look at neuroplasticity for one moment. We're literally looking at a neuron with the axons like the octopus's tentacles coming out. The power of this. I remember one day at a lecture in Trinity College with Dr. Shane O'Mara, and he put on a YouTube clip of the chatter of the brain, the neurons chattering, connecting with each other. And it was like chickens in a coop. The noise was something. It was really, really an experience to listen to. Neuroplasticity is the brain's capacity to continue growing and evolving in response to life's experiences. Plasticity of itself is the capacity to be shaped, molded, remolded, and altered. So neuroplasticity then is the ability of the brain to adapt or change over time by creating new neurons and building new networks. So it's the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience or following injury. I remember one day Dr. Shane O'Mara saying, well, you know, when you entered college here after years of no study, the dendritic branching in your brain was very sparse. It was like a winter tree without leaves. But he says, by the time you leave, that dendritic branching will be like a lush green forest because of the learning. Okay, what's neurogenesis? It refers to the creation of new brain cells. Contrary to prior beliefs, modern research has revealed that certain regions of the brain, particularly the hippocampus, are capable of generating new cells throughout adult life. And we've all heard of one of the cabbies in London having the largest hippocampus in the world. Why? Because they had to learn all these roads and these avenues right throughout London in order to pass their test to becoming a cab driver in London. Notwithstanding having sat-nav, etc. these days, they have to pass these tests. So it did enlarge the hippocampus, that learning. But we often hear the brain referred to as the computer. I rather like to think of it as the orchestra. This phrase really caught my eye. The brain, orchestra, not computer, with billions of neurons cooperating and to produce the symphony we call thought. So heretofore they thought maybe we had 100 billion neurons in the brain. They reckon it's at about 86 billion. And now with the introduction of fMRI, functional MRI scanning, they've got a whole window on the brain that we didn't have in the past. I saw my first fMRI scanner in operation in Trinity College. Now look at this. We take the neuron on the left as A and the one on the right as B. So when the axon of cell A is near enough to excite cell B and repeatedly and permanently take part in firing it, some growth process or metabolic changes take place in one or in both cells such that A's efficiency as the one that's firing B is increased. So A's muscle is increased and strengthened. Hold that thought now in terms of how that can be used for the good in disempowering the saboteur and empowering the sage, and that sage, sensible, positive voice in your brain. Okay, so neuroplasticity is the key to shifting the balance of power. This is how repeated action becomes an automatic habit. The brain is made up of the neurons. When a signal travels down a neuron, it activates other neurons based on the synapses, the connections that connect the neuron. Which neuron will be activated? Well, in Shirzad Shamin's positive intelligence, this representation truly encapsulates what he wants to achieve. He wants to disempower the saboteur, that voice, that negative voice in the head, that negative chatter, that axon could have run down on the left-hand side for the negative, but he wants to empower the positive, the sage voice. So every time a neuron activates another, it's more likely the signal will go down in that direction next time round. So neural pathways are being established. Think for a moment. our dependence on screen and our emerging dependence, the emerging dependence of our children on screens. What is it doing for the wiring of the brain? So the interplay between neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. Rick Hansen famously said the neurons that fire together are wired together. So we are hoping that the sage will wire together and disempower the saboteur. In other words, the more the neurons communicate with one another, the stronger the connection will be. Similarly, you heard the phrase, use it or lose it. We're hoping that we will lose the negative bond there of the saboteur, that negative voice in your head. If you want to do a positive intelligence assessment on yourself, go in on Shazad Shameen's website, www.positiveintelligence.ie, or maybe it's .com, and you will actually get an inventory there that you will complete, and you will get a report into your inbox, which will indicate to you your top 3 saboteurs. And I guarantee you they'll be deadly accurate. They were for me. Okay, so now how am I going to apply this neuroplasticity? How does it play out in everyday life? Well, our ability to bounce back in response to setbacks. That's our resilience. We're constantly getting back up and fighting back. So we're strengthening that positive. Healing and recovery from traumatic brain injury by moving critical functions from a damaged to a healthy area of the brain. Recovery of the ability to express ourselves following the loss of speech after an accident or a brain injury. And one famous example is Gabrielle Gifford, the US representative who was shot on the head. And she'd lost her speech and she had lost a lot of functioning. And with rest and with recovery time, she's regained her speech. And you all heard of the phantom limb syndrome, where somebody has an amputation, but they still get the urge to itch that limb that's now missing because the brain has been programmed in that direction. And a lot of people, it continues right over the years after they have an amputation. Then there's neural activity transference from an injured finger or digit, whereby the other fingers take over that territory. So the plasticity, that fluidity of the brain. Can we stimulate neuroplasticity? Well, physical exercise releases BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It triggers the growth of new synaptic connections and bolsters the signal transmission from neuron to neuron. So high-intensity cycling or aerobic exercises enhances the functioning of BDNF. Decreased levels are associated with stress, with the neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, Huntington's. Engaging in social interaction empowers us. Pursuing innovative and novel activities, even play right across the lifespan, that energy, that enjoyment from play and interaction, immersing ourselves in stimulating environments. So can you see how important the home as a stimulating environment is, how important the workplace as a stimulating environment is, repeatedly practicing positive activities, creating enriching and stimulating environments at home and in the workplace, discovering our purpose and working towards it. Fiercely important, otherwise we're in free fall and we're aimless. Engaging in mindfulness to train mental strategies. Breathing, slowing the mind and the body to respond appropriately to stress in the home, to stress in the workplace environment. And that takes me right through now to bringing Cindy on board. So I'm going to stop sharing and I am going to hand Cindy host, and Cindy's going to take us through 10 wonderful moments of breathing and take it back to the workplace with you. It can be used even before you go into highly tense meetings. It can be used in stressful situations. You can even use it without people noticing you using it. Okay, Cindy.
Thank you.
Not at all. Okay.
I think
Off
I'm
you go.
pretty aware of your information, but hearing it today, the way you presented it, was very inspiring. So thank you for that.
Hey, thanks, Cindy. Thank you.
I will be changing the tempo right now, and I'd like to invite you to be aware of how you're sitting in your chair. And sit as straight as possible without leaning back on the back of your chair, and allow your vertebrae to support itself with muscles from both sides of your vertebrae. And try to imagine where your hip bones are. And after you find those hip bones and you realize how they stabilize your position, pull your vertebrae up long and bring your chin slightly forward towards your chest. So how does that feel? And your body may say, unusual. Yes, it is unusual because we usually rest in some way on one place or another. But if we practice this type of sitting in certain intervals, your back muscles will become stronger. That too is part of neuroplasticity. The muscles that are used become stronger. So now that you have the optimal sitting situation, concentrate on that orchestra, the orchestra that Teresa calls the brain. What kind of music are you hearing right now? And just write down 3 words very quickly to note what that music is all about. Just 3 words. Lay down your pencils and come back to your breathing, and you may close your eyes if you feel comfortable. It always means a little bit of loss of control, yes, but you do have more control and concentration on your inner body. And when you're there with your concentration in your inner body, watch how you're breathing. And try to imagine that anatomy around both of your lungs. On your in-breath, your chest expands. And on the out-breath, it's released. And try to imagine your heart is carefully tucked right behind your left lung. So with each in-breath and with each out-breath, you are giving signals to your heart. And your heart is giving signals to your lungs. So if you can imagine and you can remember those difficult situations where you feel your heart going faster, then you can also remember that your breathing becomes more shallow. And we need to practice exactly the opposite. The more anxiety, the more fear is there, the longer the out-breath. And the normal person during the day takes too much oxygen in and does not release enough used air. So for this practice, I'm going to invite you on the in-breath to breathe through your nose and count to 4. Make a short pause. And on the out-breath, breathe through your mouth and listen to your own out-breath as if you're playing a wind instrument. And take your time and realize when you practice taking your time, that too is very unusual. We usually try to get rid of it. And this time, enjoy that out breath, enjoy the sound that you'll make on that out breath like wind on the beach. So let's start the first in breath, in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Out through the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, until your lungs are completely empty. Back to the in breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And be aware of the impatience that comes because everything is not in its usual pace. And just enjoy and smile and think, okay, impatience, you can have me back in a couple of weeks, in a couple of minutes, but right now I'm going to take my time. In breath 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Out breath as long as possible, hopefully about 8. And I'll allow you to use this time now by practicing alone. In breath, enjoy each step. What am I experiencing on the in breath? What am I experiencing in the pause? What am I experiencing on the exhalation? Is my posture correct so that my breathing can happen correctly? And I invite you to enjoy this new experience of relaxation. After a couple of minutes, I'll call you back and we'll talk about it. No cutting corners. Enjoy the long span. One more in and out breath, please. And slowly open your eyes. And try to imagine what that orchestra, the brain, what kind of sounds it's making now. And just write those 3 words down. And for these last closing words, I'd like to explain neurologically what you were experiencing if you decided to participate. Your sympathetic nerve runs between your brain and throughout your whole body. And it goes back and forth with the information about both. So if you decide for self-empowerment to send your sympathetic nerve to your brain, everything is fine, your brain, after a while, will believe that. And you will experience, after more practice, that that's the way it is. There are breathing exercises for sleeping, for anxiety, for sadness, for getting more energy in the body, and for a number of other things. Because our breath plays such a central role together with our heart, telling our brain how it is. So I'm, quite a fan of this practice, and I have been sick a couple of days last week, and the only thing I could use, besides good medicine, of course, was my breathing exercises, because my heart really didn't know what it was going through. It was a stomach flu. But I just kept telling my heart, everything is going to be okay. And so I really did practice it a lot during that time. And I was not as confused or anxiety ridden as often when you don't know what you've got. So that was just something that I experienced in the very close future, in the past, right now. But if you're interested in more of this, I do have more to offer, and I also offer personal sessions, hour sessions, to getting to know you and find out your own curiosity. So I'll be very curious about your comments. So thank you for your participation.
Okay, thank you very much, Cindy, for that. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. And I hope everybody else did as well. So we'll just move on now to the final leg of the talk. I'm conscious you probably most likely are on your lunch break. And moving on to looking at more on Habit Formation. This is a brilliant book. It's a classic. It is around a long time. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I often recommend the 4 quadrants of time management suggested by Stephen Covey to get order on your day. What's important, what's urgent, what's not immediately urgent but still important. What other people are telling you is urgent, but you know it's not important, so you delegate it or bin it. And what's not important and not urgent, do not waste your time on. But he's got wonderful habits built around the phrases that I grew up on. I can hear my mother in my ears. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. No more nonsense. We were reared on this. Self-mastery. Habits 4, 5, and 6. Personality oriented, the teamwork, the cooperation, the communication, and you know the buzzword of the organization these days is collaboration. He does a wonderful send up on win and lose, and he coined the phrase synergy, win-win. Work together. I help you, you help me, we arrive together. And they reckon the Fortune 500 companies are all win-win companies. They have win-win cultures where teamwork, they just synergize and they work on the talent of each person, synergizing together to bring the project to fruition. And then you've got the 7th habit, self-care, which he calls sharpen the saw. It's renewal, creating an upward spiral of growth, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. I recommend that highly as a good read. Now, you might ask me about changing habits. Well, habits may be viewed as having 3 key elements. The trigger, that's the thought, the emotion, the sense. What's triggered in you? What was triggered in you initially that formed this habit that becomes so automatic now, and it might be a bad habit? How are you going to actually go back in there and analyze your habits? The behavior, establish what you want to change, and then the outcome. What do I want to achieve from this? And I ask you, do we actually give any or enough thought to this process? So here's the habit tracker. Do it for yourself. It's in the workbook that I give you today. Identify the trigger, behavior, and the desired result. And now with your newfound understanding of how to arm and empower the sage and disempower that saboteur voice in your head, this should be all the more easy for you to do. With consistency and follow through every day, make it part of your journaling. Consistency and follow through will bring about change. So your openness to change. Hardwick found that employees in growth mindset organizations were 47% more likely to see their colleagues as trustworthy, 34% more likely to feel a strong sense of ownership and commitment to the organization, 65% more likely to say their companies support risk-taking, which is the new buzzword. They say the only certainty in today's organization is uncertainty because of the pace and amount of change coming at us. And finally, she noted 49% were more likely to say that their companies foster innovation. So does your company foster this psychological safety where everybody feels that they can think aloud, they can dream aloud, they can make a contribution without any retribution or any comeback on them? So she noted that increased financial return, heightened engagement, attracting like-minded talent, happy, informed, risk-taking culture was the basis for thriving. Okay, so why a growth mindset is key to organizational agility and success? What are the hallmarks of a growth mindset? Embracing change, striving for constant improvement, reflecting the belief that individuals can develop, learn, and grow right across the lifespan. Okay, so these growth mindset companies and organizations embrace challenges, they walk through obstacles, they show more resilience, they bounce back after setbacks. They're more likely to accept feedback and criticism well, using it to improve performance. Other success inspires them. colleagues, the team to reach even higher levels. So think of COVID-19, and you've heard the phrase adapt or die, and it literally was that for some companies. There was a shift to virtual working literally overnight. Before that, if it were even suggested, there would have been a walk through. The unions would have been out up in arms, but suddenly everyone's back was to the wall, so we had to survive, adapt to survive. So virtual rooms were born, whiteboard sharing, video conferencing. And I read a citation on Microsoft Nadella CEO saying growth culture preferred platform was the preferred platform for machine learning, AI, and cloud computing. And it outperformed S&P 500 index by 80% or over 80%. So Gen Z, millennials, the digital natives are so in there and so thriving on this use of technology and the possibilities of technology. My question, being a traditionalist, being a baby boomer, is watch the wiring of the brain. Wire the brain properly first for self-sufficiency, and then use technology as the tool to advance it. Getting the person job fit right, I've referred to it already, so important. Leadership's focus for success, attract and retain like-minded people who exhibit the characteristics of growth mindset. Train current and future leaders on how to have and promote a growth mindset. And finally, embed a growth mindset in your organizational culture. Your organization culture, that whole thing, that culture, if you consider the intergenerational spread in your organization, from the oldest right down to the newcomer, think of the richness you have there in experience and the youngsters' enthusiasm to get dug in there, but all of them are adding to that culture and giving of themselves, their values, their vision, etc., to that organizational culture. So road mapping towards mindset agility. Establish the growth mindset as a unifying cross-company force. Make it a core leadership goal. Build it into business-specific goals. Create cross-functional reinforcement. Promote and connect big initiatives across the organization. Be risk takers. When attacked from a whole cross-organizational perspective, the likelihood of success is heightened. Enable processes and systems. Finally, integrate the growth mindset objectives into performance and talent management, resources, processes, and technology within your company. So the psychology underpinning change, as you've seen, the brain is built to change in response to experience. So how can we capitalize on that? So the effective management of change projects is crucial to their success. Change usually has significant impact on employees, on their morale, on their productivity. And the question always arises, how is it going to affect me? How is it going to affect my work conditions? Is it going to add to my workload? And in some cases, particularly during COVID and post-COVID, will I still have a job at the end of it? And as AI grabs a hold on the workplace, that's going to be the question. Will I still have a job at the end of this? Companies can find it difficult to regain their competitive edge after restructuring. And they reckon that an awful lot, that it was 2/3 of mergers fail because of cultural misfit. So that's a big percentage, really. And Elliott in 1990 argued that the successful management of change is determined more by people factors than by finance. You can't have a company, you can't have a thriving organization without the people and the mindset, the right mindset in it. Many models have attempted to grasp and track the stages of change in response to its employees. You have the unfreezing, changing, and refreezing, all of these different models. We, myself and Cindy, came across a beautiful model, The Immunity to Change by Lisa Lahey. And we intend on webinar 3 to take you right down this route with us on immunity to change mapping. Okay, so basically it can be done, the whole immunity to change mapping can be done by creating your personal map. You learn how to identify the obstacles you need to solve to reach a productive solution. You recognize the unconscious goals you falsely rely on to protect yourself. And you acknowledge your psychological immune system that protects you from change. So We strive, we go into the fetal position of self-protection. We think we're doing ourselves a favor, but in actual fact, we're not. So myself and Cindy are going to take you down the route of drawing up your own immunity to change map, your improvement goals, identifying your improvement goals, what you're doing and what you're not doing, the hidden competing commitments that may be holding you back, the worries in the back of your mind, the what ifs, and finally, the big assumptions that are probably baseless, that are in actual fact holding you back. So what's the one thing that if I could get significantly better at would help me to be a better version of myself? Moving on to the doing and not doing. What you're doing and what you're not doing. What are you currently doing and not doing that gets in the way of your improvement goals, your worries, your fears, your imaginings? Finally, coming on to the big assumptions. What assumptions must you be making that make your column 3 make perfectly good sense? Okay, this is what you get, the takeaways. The audio, the Wired for Success explaining the Wellbeing Formula to you. The actual audio of today, the 10 techniques for dealing with self-limiting beliefs and recommended reading. There you've got the mindset, you've got the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Covey. There you've got the Positive Intelligence by Shizat Shini, which is a real solid, good read. And I think is something that we should be teaching our children. Had this delivered to me last week, No Mud, No Lotus, and the Japanese approach to finding happiness and living your life's purpose. And finally, my own booklet that I'm giving you, the 10 techniques for dealing with self-limiting beliefs. Yeah? So that's the key. So let today mark your learning journey, the commencement of your learning journey. So on the 20th at 1 o'clock, if you feel like having your lunch while listening to us, let's come and roadmap your well-being journey. Okay, so thank you, Cindy, for coming with me on this journey. Thank you all for hopping on board, for placing your trust in us. And I hope you've learned something and that we've enthused you so much that you're going to follow the Wired for Success and that you're going to hop on board again on the 20th of October. So this, we hope to grow and thrive into something beautiful. And my book, mid next year, should solidify it and give each one of you a toolkit to follow. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.